welcome to the deep dive. You know, when we talk weight loss, it usually comes down to the same things, right? Calories, carbs, discipline, the usual playbook.
Pretty standard stuff, yeah.
But today, we're taking a really different path. We're looking at insights from this fascinating figure named Dan Hollis. He goes way beyond the typical stuff.
He really does. A different lens entirely.
We've actually got a really personal account of meeting him, some reflections on his teachings, and his specific human-centered protocol. So our mission today, to dig into the deeper psychological, the emotional side of weight loss, especially like what happens when that constant food noise finally goes quiet.
That's the key, isn't it? The quiet.
And here's the kicker, the big takeaway we think you might find.
It was maybe never really about the food. Okay, let's get into this.
Let's do it.
So Dan Hollis kicks things off with a pretty surprising take on semaglutide. He says it gives you silence.
Silence, yeah.
But what does that actually mean? Beyond just like not being hungry, what's the deeper shift he's pointing to? Well, a really crucial insight here is that this silence, it's not just that your stomach isn't rumbling. The source describes it as a moment where food stops talking.
Stops talking. Okay.
Yeah. And for some people, this is huge. It might be the first honest moment they've had in 20 years. It sort of reframes the whole thing as decoding emotional amnesia.
Wow. Decoding emotional amnesia.
Exactly. It's like uncovering layers that were, hidden by all the cravings and the constant thoughts about food.
That's incredibly powerful because the standard advice, what we always hear, is fat is about food. Full stop.
A simple equation.
But Dan Hollis just comes out and says, and this is a quote, it's about something else, something nobody wants to talk about. I mean, that's a real challenge to the whole narrative.
It really is. And it begs the question, okay, if food isn't talking anymore, what is speaking up in that quiet? And here's where it gets tricky. The danger in this newfound silence, as Dan points out, is that most people don't relapse into hunger. They relapse into confusion. In that personal account we looked at, the author talks about how, in the quiet, the stories we've buried tend to rise.
The buried stories.
Yeah, and it makes people feel like they've lost their favorite lie. It can be really unsettling, pretty disorienting for a lot of folks.
So, okay, instead of the usual lose weight fast slogans, Dan Hollis flips the script. He proposes this headline: what if you weren't broken, just confused?
That's a huge shift, isn't it?
It really is. It just instantly takes away the shame.
Right.
And puts you on a path of like learning and trying to understand what's really going on.
Exactly. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, he makes this vital distinction. Weight loss is biology. Staying there is narrative.
Biology versus narrative.
Okay. Meaning, yeah, the body can change, sometimes pretty fast. But the story you tell yourself about who you are, that often lags way behind.
Ah, I see.
And this creates what he actually calls identity grief. It's that silence after the celebration, the bit you don't see in the before and after pictures.
That internal disconnect.
Precisely. The feeling inside hasn't caught up with the outside.
That makes so much sense. And you mentioned earlier that hunger doesn't just like disappear, it shapeshifts.
Yeah.
What does Dan mean by that? And why is filling that new space so important?
Right. So Dan explains it like this. Hunger doesn't just vanish into thin air. It kind of morphs, it shapeshifts into other things, maybe memory, confusion, or just space, emptiness.
Okay.
And if that new space isn't actively, consciously filled with something nourishing, and that doesn't just mean food.
Right, nourishing emotionally or mentally.
Exactly.
Right.
Then those old cravings, they can absolutely creep back in. It's not just about taking something away. It's about intentionally adding something meaningful into that void. That's where the real sustainable work starts.
Okay, so if we get that this shape-shifting hunger leaves this void, this space that needs filling, how does Dan Hollis suggest we actually do that? This leads us right into his practical approach, right? The Dan Hollis protocol.
Yes, his framework.
And he's clear. It's not some rigid formula. He calls it a window to change, not a crutch. So it's less about tracking every little thing.
Not macros or perfect timing.
And more about using that quiet space the semaglutide provides.
Right.
Strategic.
Precisely. And the very first step in his protocol is start with silence.
Start with silence.
Yeah. As the source puts it, when the cravings stop, the truth begins. So the key here is using this quiet phase to really observe, to notice what emotions bubble up when eating isn't the go-to comfort anymore.
So learning to listen to the quiet.
Learning to listen, exactly. Understanding your deeper needs and patterns that were maybe masked before.
Okay, so after starting with silence, what's next?
Next up is rewire the rituals. And this is crucial. It's not just stopping old habits, it's consciously replacing them.
Replacing, not just removing.
Yes, because think about it. Every pound lost represents a habit that needs replacing. Food rituals, they're wired deep in our brains neurologically. Semaglutide quiets the physical urge, which actually makes it easier to see what needs rebuilding. So maybe that old 3 p.m. snack ritual, maybe that becomes a short walk or 5 minutes of journaling or calling a friend.
Actively building a new pathway.
Exactly, building something new in the place of the old.
Interesting. What else is in the protocol?
Well, this next one is really interesting timing-wise. He calls it anchor identity before the weight drops.
Before, not after.
Before, or at least concurrently. The source warns about this major trap. Your body changes faster than your identity.
That disconnect again.
Right. And this identity work, he says, it's mostly invisible and more important than the number on the scale. So the big question for you listening becomes, who am I becoming as I lose this weight?
Proactive identity work.
Yes. Because without anchoring that new sense of self, your brain, operating on the old software, can actually sabotage the body's success.
Wow. Okay, so silence, rituals, identity. What's next?
Then comes pace the process. Dan really focuses on metabolic pacing, not speed.
Pacing, not speed. So deliberately slowing down.
In a way, yes. It means intentionally managing the rate of physical change to give your internal world, your emotions, your psychology, a chance to actually catch up.
Okay, that makes sense.
He calls it protection. Pacing is protection because changing too fast physically without that internal integration, that often leads to overwhelm or even collapse. It's about building sustainability.
Building a solid foundation, not just rushing the construction.
You got it. It's about making sure the whole system can handle the change.
Okay, so what about, stopping the medication? Does he address that?
Absolutely. That's a huge part of it. Step 5 is plan the off-ramp from day 1.
From day 1.
Really?
Yes, he insists on planning for life after semaglutide right from the beginning. Because, as he argues, the real work begins after the medication.
Right, when the scaffolding of the drug is removed.
Exactly. He believes most relapse happens because those unaddressed patterns resurface once the medication is there suppressing the signals. So you need a plan for that reality. A sustainable path, not just a temporary fix. Makes sense.
Then comes build the scaffolding. And this is so key.
Scaffolding. Like construction.
Sort of, yeah. But for your mind and life, he says support isn't optional. It's neurobiological scaffolding.
Neurobiological.
Yeah.
Okay. So not just like helpful, but necessary.
Necessary. And it's broad. The personal account mentions it includes emotional support, definitely, but also community, structure, routine, even the language you use about yourself and your journey.
Language too.
Yeah. As the source says, humans deliver meaning. And that meaning, that support system, is vital for holding the changes.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot of practical structure. Is there a final piece?
There is. And it circles back to that narrative idea. The final step is rewrite the narrative.
The story again.
Exactly. This is where Dan's approach, his voice, really comes through, helping people fundamentally rewrite those deep-seated stories about failure, food, self-worth.
The ones that often drive the behavior in the first place.
Precisely. Because, as he puts it so powerfully, no amount of medication can sustain a story that says, I don't deserve this. You have to change the inner script.
That's really profound. So pulling this all together, what Dan Hollis is suggesting is this huge shift, isn't it?
It really is.
It's moving from biology to identity, from medication to meaning,
Yep.
from shame to structure,
Crucial.
from silence to strategy.
Yeah.
It's about transforming your whole relationship with yourself, really, not just what's on your plate.
That sums it up perfectly. A holistic transformation.
So this journey, the way Dan Hollis frames it,
Yeah.
it's really not just about eating less, is it? It feels much more like it's about, well, living more fully.
Living more, yeah. It's about that deeper personal transformation that goes way beyond the scale and hopefully lasts long after.
Absolutely.
And maybe a final thought to leave people with, something that really stuck out from the sources. If you're not careful, biology will give you results that psychology will dismantle.
Oof. Okay, biology will give you results that psychology will dismantle. That's powerful.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does. So maybe something for you to reflect on. What truth might start to surface for you if the usual noise in your life quieted down? Or if those familiar comforts weren't quite so available or needed?
Yeah, what stories are you telling yourself about your own challenges?
And maybe, What new narratives are you ready to start writing?